Praise God. It is an honor and great privilege given to us by God to witness this wonderful week, this glorious and blessed week, where we will learn at the feet of the cross and from the table of the Lord. Anchoring the program, it is your friend and your brother, Ibrahim Daniel Amshi. This week, by the mercies of God, the topic which we will be treating is the 10th commandment. The 10 commandments. That's our topic for this week. Being 13th of June 2020. What are they? What exactly is this 10th commandment? While the 10 commandments are, in a simple term, a set of rules, a set of do's and don'ts given to Moses by God. And he gave those rules to Moses when the Israelites were on their way to the promised land. This took place at a mountain called Mount Sinai. And for you to get a clearer picture or deeper understanding of what this 10 commandment is, I will suggest you start reading from Exodus chapter number 19 from verse 1, and then you go through to chapter 20 from verse 1 through to 26, and then Deuteronomy chapter 5 from verse 1 to 22. As usual, before we go further, we would like to know and to understand what these 10 commandments are not. What they are not. These commandments or these 10 commandments are not the only laws given by God. They are not the only laws. They are not the only rules or commandments given by God. However, they have all other laws driven from out of them. All other rules, all other do's and the don'ts can be extracted from this 10. So we can expand them, we can expatiate them and keep on listing the laws of God, and we will have a place where we will relate with those 10 commandments. Why did God give out those commandments? Why the commandments? Those commandments became necessary in order to help the nation of Israel relate well with their Maker and also relate well with other human beings. Those set of rules are classified or divided in two: relating with God and relating with other human beings. Number 1 commandment, number 2 through 4 all talks about mankind relating with God. And from number 5 through the 10th talks about mankind and mankind, how humans need to interact or relate with each other. God had to give out this set of rules in order for the Israelites to be governed by it. There are some set of things that we would like to know beforehand. Before we go deeper into the teaching, we need to understand some few things about these 10 commandments. The first thing on our list is that God audibly listed them out. He spoke them out. He said them before He writes them. Before God wrote those commandments, He spoke them out. Secondly, God wrote those commandments on 2 tablets of stone, and He gave them to Moses. God wrote on 2 tablets of stones and he gave same to Moses. Please, there are verses there. You can follow, you can read through for more understanding of what we are talking about. Number 3, the commandments were written on either side of each tablet, the front and the back if it has so. There are commandments written on either side of not only the first but even the second tablet. Number 4, Moses broke those tablets when he saw Israelites with the golden calf. Remember the story of the golden calf? Yeah, when Moses was coming down after spending 40 days with God, and the Israelites realized or felt like Moses was delaying, he may not even come back. They decided to make for themselves another God. When he saw that, he smashed or he broke those 2 tablets which he collected from God. Number 5, God asked Moses to hew similar stones as the one he broke. After he broke those commandments, he went back to God and pleading on behalf of the people, begging God on behalf of the people that God should forgive them for the sin which they have committed. And God asked him to hew similar stones in order for him, God, to write on them once again. Number 6, God wrote on the newly hewn tablets and handed them over to Moses. Moses hewed tablets of stone, took them to God, and God wrote on them, then handed them over to Moses again. The 7th thing we will talk about or would like to know about is that Moses audibly repeated those commandments before he handed over the leadership to Joshua. It became necessary for Moses to reiterate, to talk about those commandments once again before he passed on. And that is found in the book of Deuteronomy. The whole book of Deuteronomy is more of a repetition of what has happened or the things that took place before that very time. The last thing we will be talking about or we would like to know about is that the tablets were placed in the Ark of the Covenant. The tablet of stones, after it was brought to them, they were placed inside the Ark of the Covenant. Although on this very particular thing, I would like you to understand that there are a lot of theologians that disagree to this. Some believe the tablets were placed or are placed beside the Ark of the Covenant. But reading through the book of Exodus 25 verse 16 and also Hebrews chapter 9 verse 4, we will realize or we will see that those tablets were placed inside the Ark of the Covenant. By the way, those things being placed inside or beside is not what matters. All what matters is that they have been with the Ark of the Covenant. The 10 Commandments. The 10 Commandments. The first one says, "You shall have no other gods before me. You shall not make for yourself an idol in any form. You shall not misuse the name of the Lord. Remember the Sabbath day by keeping it holy. Honor your father and your mother. You shall not murder. You shall not kill. You shall not commit adultery. You shall not steal. You shall not give false testimony against your neighbor. You shall not covet your neighbor's house." These are the commandments we have. The first one on our list is that we shall have no other gods before God Himself. You shall have no other gods before me, says the Lord. Now, any relationship, any hobby, any person, or anything, including ourselves, including yourself, that comes before or between you and God in your life, or even part of it, is a God. Anything that replaces or takes the place of God in your life is nothing other than God. And God is saying, you shall have no other gods before me. Anything that you find yourself obsessed with is a God. Anything which you may look up to for your sustenance, for your provision, or for your satisfaction can be a God. Because whenever you are in need, you will go to such a thing. Because automatically you believe that that is the source. And God hates that. Sports, jewelries, work, clothing, television channels, or television series, women, men, children, spouses, all these ones can become God in themselves. The second commandment says, you should not make for yourself an idol, nor worship anything else beside me. You should not make for yourself an idol, nor worship anything. Don't make for yourself an idol. NIV says, you should not make for yourself an image in the form of anything in heaven above, or on the earth beneath, or in the waters below. King James says, New King James Version says, you should not make for yourself a carved image, any likeness of anything that is in heaven above, or that is in the earth beneath, or that is in the water under the earth. And I like it how the Message puts it. It says, no carved gods of any size, shape, or form of anything whatever, whether of things that fly, or walk, or swim. Don't bow down to them and don't serve them, because I am God, your God, and I am most jealous God, punishing the children for any sins their parents pass on them to the third, and yes, even to the fourth generation of those who hates me. But I am unswervingly loyal to the 1,000 who love me and keep my commandment. God hates it when we regard anything as God, when we revere something as God, when we worship something as God. The difference between having other gods and making an idol for ourselves, although these two may appear similar, but they really differ. They are not the same thing. They are different. When you become obsessed with something which you may not necessarily give it God's right, but it took some from you because you allow it. You didn't regard that thing as God. You didn't say that this is my God. No. But the way you do honor it, the way you do respect it, it has already taken the place of God in your life. That is having another God outside God. But when you intentionally make something of an equal or similarity with God in any fashion, and you even worship those kind of things, you have an idol. They are two different things. Making an idol and having another God. The third one says, you should not misuse the name of the Lord your God. Do not misuse the name of the Lord your God. Misusing. This is called profanity. Profaning the name of God. Treating God's name with profanity. Using God's name in a fashion that His name is not glorified. NIV says, You shall not misuse the name of the Lord your God, for the Lord will not hold anyone guiltless who misuses his name. No using the name of God, your God, in curses or silly banter. God won't put up with the irrelevant use of his name. That's the message. God honors his name. He reveres his name. You don't go around talking about God's name, just calling God anywhere, anyhow, without revering it, without giving it its due honor and respect. God will hold you accountable for that. Jesus taught so much about that, especially swearing. Remember the Sabbath day. How shall you remember it? By keeping it holy. Our God is a God of order. He could have finished creating the whole heavens and the earth in a second. He could have created everything in a second. Because he is God. He can make the heavens and the earth, the waters, the trees, the plants, the mankind, everything in just a second. And boom, he's done. Yet he took 6 days. Why? I so much believe that God took 6 days in order to teach us that we must not overwork ourselves. There should be a limit to what we can do in a day. God could have chosen, he could have decided not to rest. That's the Sabbath day. Because when we read from Genesis, the creation account, we discover that on the 7th day God rested. And if God did not rest, it simply means that we should also work without resting. That is what it means. But God worked 6 days and rested 1 day. So he is asking us to work 6 days and rest 1 day. God knows how he formed you. God knows how he formed me. And in our manual, in the manual of our lives, we need to rest and be refreshed at least once in a week. At least once in a week, we need to rest. We need to get refreshed. Because without us being refreshed, we may crash. Therefore, not working for 6 days will mean laziness. I so much believe that. If you decide not to work at all, from day 1, day 2, day 3, you don't do anything tangible, you don't do anything meaningful, you don't do anything at all, you are nothing but a lazy bee. And that is not an attitude of God. God worked. Not resting for a day will also mean something else. It will be called rebellion, because you are rebelling against God. You are going against God's manual or God's standard for your life. You decide to work all through the week. Now, I would like you to understand something. Just sit down and think about this. Who brought about the idea of 7 days making a week? Surely it was not Moses. It started long time ago, even before mankind was created, because God talks about day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, all through day 7 during the creation. And that was why he created mankind on the 6th day. And then he rested on the 7th day. And he now made it to be in this format that after the 7th it should be 1. If it were to be mankind that brought about this idea, mankind may say, no, it should be 10 days, making a week. Then, or maybe 12 days or so. But God, by his own mercies, decided, by his own knowledge and wisdom, decided that it should be 7. After 7, then it should be 1. God designed those days in order for you to work for 6 days. But on the 7th day, he wants you to rest. He wants you to be refreshed. Not only refreshed by resting alone, but by having a relationship with him, by communicating with him, by having a dialogue. a good conversation, a fellowship with Him. Honor your father and your mother. Honor them. How shall you honor them? You need to appreciate them. Appreciate them. They deserve to be appreciated. Our parents deserve to be appreciated. Then accept their authority. They have an authority. God has given them authority over your life. Although this authority is not an absolute authority, there is a limitation towards that, because although you are to obey your parents, there are some things that you need to consider. The first commandment talks about putting something in between you and God. Your parents should not take the place of God in your life. They should not, no matter how much you love them, no matter how much you do respect them. You should not respect them more than you do for God, or you do God. When your parents gives you or said something that is contradictory to the word of God, or that is not in line with the word of God, it should not be followed, because they don't have absolute authority over you, but they have an authority over you. Accept that authority. It's part of honoring them. Treat them with respect. Respect them. Respect them. Provide for them. Provide for them. And then you pray for them. If you appreciate them, accept their authority, treat them with respect, provide for them, and pray for them, you honor them. You shall not murder. You shall not kill. Killing, murdering of a fellow human is prohibited by God. Is prohibited. God did not send you. God did not ask you to kill anybody for any reason. He didn't say that. You should not spill the blood of a fellow human. Jesus added to us that whoever gets angry with a fellow brother is guilty of murder, because when you get angry with a person in your heart, you might be tempted to feel that you will be wishing, you will be desiring to see something bad happen to the person. And that equals killing. You should not commit adultery. Adultery, fornication, is nothing but a sexual act between persons whom are not married, whom are not spouse to each other. Any sexual relationship or an act outside marriage is a disobedience to God. Anyone. Teaching about adultery, Jesus Christ taught. He said, if any man looks at a woman lustfully, he is guilty of adultery. Matthew 5:27 and 28. If any woman looks at a man and she lusts after the man, she is guilty of adultery. This means that adultery must not be physical. You must not have an intimate contact with a lady or with a guy before you commit adultery or you fornicate. It simply means that it could be imaginary. It could be imaginary. And that is, we have things like sexting, sending messages that has all these inciting contents in them. Maybe they may have pictures that may make a person think about sex, or may make a person arouse. We have pornographies, and all those things are nothing but an act of adultery, an act of fornication, which is not right, which is a sin before God. Although it's unfortunate that sex is now considered the norm amongst the youth. Not only the youths, even the older ones are not left behind. It's very unfortunate that even children are now engaged in it. It's unfortunate. You should not steal. Stealing is another commandment which the Lord gave. Stealing simply means taking or even using anything that does not belong and it is not intended for you. Anything that you might have carried or used that does not belong to you or is not even intended for you is nothing but a theft. We're in a time where the resources of other people's resources are never valued again. We have a lot of scammers everywhere, scamming people, dubious people, even inside our churches, cheating people of their money or properties, depriving workers of their just wages, their salaries, their stipends, embezzlement, fraud, vandalism, and more of those things. They're nothing but an act of theft. Stealing is forbidden by God. You shall not give false testimony against your neighbor. False testimony, intentional deception of another by speaking falsehood for or against them is prohibited. An intentional deception by saying things against or for someone is a false testimony. We are supposed to uphold nothing other than the truth. Truth should be the only thing that we should always talk about. The level of our lives have now been so pathetic that we do give false testimony even about ourselves. It's no longer false testimony against our neighbors. It's now false testimonies against or for ourselves. It's unfortunate. It's unfortunate. The last commandment says you should not covet your neighbor's house. You should not covet your neighbor's wife. You should not covet anything that is of your neighbor. And I remember when Jesus was talking about your neighbor, they asked him, said, who is my neighbor? Who is your neighbor? Not only taking hold of things that are not yours, which is stealing. God forbids even the feeling of envy, the feelings of greed, the jealousy, being jealous of anything that is not yours, being envious of other people's resources, other people's goods. When God blessed other people, you feel unhappy. God hates that. And God is not happy whenever we do that. We often get angry when we see others prospering. When we see other people prospering in their lives, we get angry. We feel bad and unhappy when our neighbors are jubilating, when they are celebrating. We even do get mad at God, not for anything, but for blessing someone. God, why? Why? We envy the resources of others. We get jealous and hate others for what they have, for what they acquire, for what God has given them. We hate them for that. We are never happy nor satisfied with what we have. These are the 10 commandments listed and briefly explained for our understanding. Now, the next question that we may ask is, are the 10 commandments still valid? Are these laws, are these do's and don'ts still valid? Yes, they are. They are valid. They are valid. They have been explained in a very simple way by Jesus Christ as nothing other than the golden rule. Jesus talks about all these 10 commandments in a very simple and understandable way from the book of Matthew, chapter number 7, verse number 12. Jesus Christ said something there. Let's read. It says, So in everything, that's NIV, do to others what you will have them do to you. Why? For this sums up the law and the prophets. It sums up all the laws and the prophets. King James says, therefore, whatever you want men to do to you, do also to them. For this is the law and the prophets. The Message says, here is a simple rule of thumb, guide for behavior. Ask yourself what you want people to do for you. Then grab the initiative and do it for them. Add up God's law and prophets, and this is what you get. The 10 Commandments are still valid. The same thing is being spoken of in the book of Luke chapter 6 verse 31. Matthew chapter 22 verse 37 through 40 says, Jesus said unto him, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. That's the first one. It's the first and the great one. Verse 38. Verse 39 says, and the second is like unto it, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. And verse 40 says, on these 2 commandments hang all the law and the prophet. On these 2 commandments. Which one? Love God and love your neighbor. Didn't Jesus change those commandments? No, he didn't. He only explained them. He expanded them from 10 to 2. Yes, he expanded them. Because there are a lot of things that may not necessarily fit into the 10 commandments, but they are being fitted into the 2 commandments listed or given to us by God in Matthew 5 verse 17. Love God with everything you got. Love your neighbor as you would love yourself. Love the Lord your God with everything you got. When you love God with everything you got, the first 4 commandments listed are being fulfilled. No doubt about that. Because the first law says, you shall have no other gods before me. You shall have no other gods before God. Now, will you ever replace that which you cherish and love with all of your life, with all that you got, with another thing lesser? No. You wouldn't. You wouldn't even dare try that. The second commandment says, you shall have no idol. Make no idol for yourself. No bow down to worship them. Now, worship is God's and He alone deserves it. Will you say you love God if you give what is genuinely His to another? No, you don't love God. You don't. The third commandment says you shall never misuse God's name. God's name shall not be misused. Now, can you go around using the name of the one you dearly love unnecessarily? You won't. You won't be slandering. You won't be talking about a person in a negative fashion. You won't just be using a person's name unnecessarily. If you dearly love, care, and respect, and even honor the person. That's the same thing with God. If you love God with everything, if you honor God, you're not going to misuse. You're not going to misuse God's name. You will revere it and cherish it. The fourth one is remember the Sabbath. And Jesus taught something. He said, if you love me, you will obey my commandment. Isn't a rest a command from God? It is. So if you love God, you will obey His command. Therefore, loving God with all of your heart, with everything you got, means fulfilling all the 4 commandments that relate to God. The next one, or the second law, says, love your neighbor as yourself. Love your neighbor as yourself. Now, the remaining 6 commandments are fulfilled in this law. Loving your neighbor as you do love yourself. Honor your father and your mother. You shall not kill. You shall not commit adultery. You shall not steal. You shall not bear false witness against anyone. You shall not covet. these 6 laws, these 6 commandments are fulfilled in loving our neighbors as we do love ourselves. How? If you truly love your neighbor as yourself, you will honor and respect them. Have you seen that? Are you seeing that? Can you see it? Now, it's no longer restricted to parents anymore. It's now expanded to include anybody else and everybody else. If you truly love your neighbor as yourself, you will honor and respect them. You will respect them. Number 2, why will you even think of killing someone you truly love? No killing. You won't kill somebody when you love the person. If you love the person, you're not going to think about killing the person. You don't even want to talk about death. You don't even want the person. You don't even want to talk about death. Because you want the person to keep on living with you because you love the person. If you love and respect the family and as you do yours, will you commit adultery or fornicate with any of them? No, only if you don't disrespect them, because it's an act of disrespect then. You don't honor them. You don't value them. If you really want any of them for yourself, wouldn't you rather follow the legal and approved way? Wouldn't you rather ask for the hand in marriage? If you love your neighbor as yourself, you will never steal from them. You will not. You will not. Only if you don't love them. But if you do love them, you are not going to steal anything, take anything, or use anything that does not belong to you, nor the thing being intended for your usage. If you love your neighbor, you will never tell a lie against or for them. You won't lie. You will not lie. The last one. Why will you even feel jealous and angry? You're supposed to celebrate when you see your neighbor prospering. You're not going to be jealous. You're not going to be angry. You're not going to feel envious about any progress being made by your neighbor. Now, do you see that loving your neighbor as yourself fulfills all the laws that relates to mankind and mankind, the relationship between a man and a fellow human? In conclusion, the golden rule is the answer. Love God with everything you have and love others as yourself. This is the whole commandment of God. The 10 commandments are fulfilled in loving God with everything we have and loving others as we do love ourselves. And that is all for this week's Bible teaching on the 10 commandments. I don't really know, but I need to ask if you've been blessed in any way. Have you been blessed in any way? Are you blessed? If you are, please, I would like you to share this teaching with other people. If it's on Facebook, please share it with your friends. You can just click on the share button. I would still like to hear from you. Maybe you have a question to ask. You can write. You can call the numbers on your screen. You can send an SMS. You can even send a WhatsApp on this number. Please, let's talk. God bless you. God bless you. God bless you. I remain your friend and your brother, Ibrahim Daniel Amshi. See you again next week.